President Trump has announced that he is indeed sending troops in to restore order in crime-infested Chicago as Democrat Run cities implode across the nation. In this video, we're going to take a look at how Chicago is but a symbol of the societal rot that's infected our nation's cities under Democrat rule, and how President Trump's strategy of sending in troops has been part of his plan to effectively strike against the far left and defeat them decisively once and for all. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. I'm coming to you from beautiful Outer Banks in North Carolina. I've been here all week with my family. We're having a wonderful vacation time, but I certainly did want to make sure we still got plenty of videos in, analyzing current events live, some super awesome conservative trends so you can live in the present in light of even better things to come. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. It's an absolute privilege to have you as a regular part of this channel where each and every day we celebrate together the inevitable collapse of left-wing globalism and the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age. Now, before we dive in here, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's Prepper's Peak new solar water heater. Now, with all the lockdowns that we've just witnessed over the last several months, this solar water heater can turn out to be our very best friend. It's an amazing device. It allows you to heat and boil water outdoors using simply sunlight. You can heat water in as little as 30 minutes and it'll work anywhere the sun shines. So you could use it to boil water, cook noodles and rice, sterilize water for drinking. It's easy to clean. It can be used anywhere there's sunlight. And the best part is that if you click on the link below, you'll get 15% off. So what can be better? Do not wait. Click on the link below before they sell out and get your own Patriot Sun cooker today. All right, gang, so let's dive right in here. President Trump has indeed announced that he's sending hundreds of federal law enforcement officers to crime-ridden Chicago to make up for the feckless and incompetent leadership of the ultra-left mayor there, Lori Lightfoot. Trump called the city a disaster. It's probably an understatement in my view. It's a total and complete abomination. And as president of the United States, he believes, rightly so, that he has an obligation to protect the civil rights of Chicago's residents in light of the total and complete incompetence of their far-left mayor, Lori Lightfoot. Now, who's busy, by the way, just tweeting out anti-Trump comments on her dwindling Twitter feed and blaming guns for all of the crime in her city. Now, if you're not familiar with the situation, the city of Chicago is imploding. Okay, it's literally collapsing as a result of decades of societal rot that's accumulated as a result of the Democrat ruling monopoly that's held the city hostage for at least half a century. I mean, it's a bizarre hostage-like situation where the voters of Chicago actually voluntarily put these incompetent, corrupt Democrats into power year after year. I guess it's like a Stockholm syndrome that's taken over there in Chicago, as well as all of our other major imploding cities. But just to give you a sense of how bad things are there in Chicago, just a day or two ago, you may have heard this. There was a mass shooting outside a city funeral home that left at least 15 people wounded. An SUV arrived at the funeral home in the early evening around 6:30, where mourners were gathered outside the funeral. When people inside the vehicle just began shooting them. It's being reported some of the mourners turned around and started firing back. So obviously this was a gang-related incident. But it was indeed reported as looking nothing less than a war zone. A few days prior to that shooting on Sunday, there was another mass shooting where 13 people were shot in a crowd of almost 200. It took place at like 4 a.m. in the morning when a fight broke out. Now, again, what these people are doing on the streets at 4 a.m., who knows? But, you know, it's not anything good, that's for sure. And while all that's going on, it's being reported that you have children as young as 10 years old who are carrying out violent carjackings throughout the city's south side. Police estimate that there have been at least 16 armed carjackings over the last month committed by assailants that were as young as 10 years old. All of this is just part of an overall surge in violent crime throughout the Windy City. Just this past weekend, Chicago's shootings left nearly 60 people wounded, nearly 10 dead in just one weekend. But alas, This societal rot is but par for the course for Democrat-run cities all across the country. In Bill de Blasio's New York City, shootings have surged by more than 358% in mid-June when compared to the same time last year. That's an almost 400% increase in shootings in New York. Now, stunningly, we have the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Stunningly, she actually has come out and authoritatively diagnosed the reason for the crime surge in her own city of New York. You probably heard about this. This so-called public official, this hope of the Democrats from New York, who's personally overseeing perhaps the single worst social degeneracy in the city's history. And that's saying something when it comes to New York City. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has come out and officially diagnosed the violence problem. Her diagnosis is that the city is socially unraveling. People are looting stores, Nike stores, stealing high-end sneakers, carjacking, murdering, and the like, because, according to Ocasio-Cortez, we are living through a depression where people feel the need to shoplift some bread or else they're going to go hungry. This is the future of the Democrat Party. The victimization of criminals knows no bounds. When lawmakers side with lawbreakers and throw law enforcement under the bus, you're obviously going to see this kind of societal collapse and this kind of insanity from our representatives. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. And of course, the evidence for this inevitable societal rot brought to you by the Democratic Party is quite literally piling up across the country. But whatever you do, don't tell far-left activists disguised as journalists over at CNN that. Look at this headline. Crime is surging in U.S. cities. Some say, and let that hit you, some say that defunding the police will actually make it fall. They should have said go away. But I don't even know if I could actually dignify this argument, but CNN goes on to claim that officers hosting barbecues and pulling up in ice cream trucks to get to know the residents of their neighborhoods can actually reduce violent crime. Actually, they say it can reduce crime rates. Crime in general, not violent crime, not murders. I don't see any frame of reference rooted in reality that could even remotely argue that law enforcement in ice cream trucks are deterrent to violent crime and murder. The Democrats have quite literally become a parody of repulsiveness. And in contrast to such a parody, this is where President Trump is clearly beginning to shine. A few weeks back, we featured the analysis on one of our videos that was made by Lord Conrad Black over at American Greatness. He was on Sebastian Gorka's radio show. Again, this is several weeks back. And he's known President Trump for 20 years. The two are very close. Lord Black, he's obviously a member of the House of Lords. He's written a major book on the Trump presidency. He told Gorka at that time that Trump was getting ready to strike. He was getting ready, together with Attorney General Bill Barr, to take down the far left in cities across the country. But this is key. According to Lord Black, and I think he's right, Trump had to wait for the far left to begin angering even liberals. So at the time, the whole Black Lives Matter fad was in full virtue signaling mode, such that anything Trump did would be construed as racist and tyrannical. So if he went into these cities with federal agents, guns a-blazing, he would only be confirming the absurd narrative that these peaceful protesters across the country were demonstrating against systemic racism in our nation, just like what Trump is doing. So he had to wait, he had to be patient, allow the incompetent insanity of these far-left mayors to run its course. And once that happened, once the absurdity of their anti-police policies became apparent, even to fellow leftists, that's when Trump would strike. That's his moment in the sun. And that, I think, he can effectively demonstrate to be the law and order president in the midst of all the societal rot that's been unleashed by incompetent far-left Democrat mayors and governors. And that is precisely what he's doing with Operation Legend, right, which is being used to tackle violent crime. Trump is deploying federal law enforcement officials, U.S. Marshals, and the like in cities across the country to do the job that these feckless left-wing mayors and governors refuse to do. And what Lord Black also pointed out is that Trump really has effectively cornered the Democrats politically in all of this. So think about it. In their Trump derangement syndrome, the Democrats have allied themselves with a deadly pandemic on the one hand and black racist extremists on the other. Who wants to be associated with a political party that's quite literally celebrating the economic devastation caused by a pandemic on the one hand, while lauding and defending the violence and societal degeneracy caused by the ethno-tribalist racism of far-left Marxists on the other? So Trump is definitely in the driver's seat right now, which is already showing in his soaring poll numbers. He's just erased a 10-point deficit, we've found. So this is very, very good news, not just for the residents of Chicago, but indeed for our entire nation as we go further into the election cycle and the presidential showdown in November. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on how Black Lives murals are being erased and defaced all across the country. It's going to absolutely make your day. And maybe even give us a new slogan, erase and deface BLM. You're not going to want to miss it. Make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.